Welcome to Dance & Co. We have a very special guest sitting down with the incredible Mandy Moore. I'm so privileged and excited.
I love you so much.
Mandy is a million things. One of those things is a two-time Emmy-winning choreographer. She's choreographed for feature films. She's choreographed for TV shows. She's done commercials. Besides choreography, she's an amazing instructor, dancer, teacher, mentor. She's my mentor. She's right here. I don't know why I'm talking about her with her here. Make some noise for Mandy Moore.
Thank you. That was a good intro.
Was it? Thank you so much for joining us.
Of course. I'm so honored. I you know this. Anytime you call, I'm like, yes, I'm in.
Thank you. I'm gonna pick your brain about your past, your experience in dance as a dancer, your evolution through the world of dance, right? This is Dance & Co, so we wanna kind of inspire fellow dancers that are pursuing the craft and want to create a career in it, but we also want to give some insight to dance enthusiasts that are just fans.
Cool.
And I think you are, for me, one of my favorite people, period. You've inspired me in so many ways, but also taught me. Anyway, let's get into it. Let's get to know you. Where are you from? Let's start from the beginning.
Okay, it's a lot, it's a lot.
Young Mandy.
Well, I grew up in a very, very small town in Colorado, which is very odd because I'm like a small town kid, like mom would just tell us to go play out in the yard and we'd come back 10 hours later and bruised from our bike ride crashes. And, I was a mountain kid.
Who's our?
My sister and I.
So that's,
yes.
You have a sister?
Yeah, younger sister. My mom's a teacher, so they're educators. My father was a manager at a lumberyard, but his true passion was music and theater. My mom used to direct shows, and my dad would be in them, and my sister and I would just go to rehearsal, and I think that's where I got the theater performance bug.
So your pops is managing a lumber shop?
Yes.
And is in love with theater?
Yes, and plays guitar every night when he comes home. Like, I remember being a kid and just listening to my dad sing and play guitar, and we'd all just like sit around the fire, and I thought that was really normal until I got to know people later in life, and I was like, I don't think everybody's dad sings guitar and plays guitar.
The cool ones do.
Well, So my mom was an English and speech teacher, and then she was also in charge of like the drama department, so she would do all of the musicals or the shows at school, and then went back to school and got her administration degree and became a vice principal of the high school, and then she was principal of the high school.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, she's a G. She's really smart.
How much do you think that influenced you in being the boss bitch that you are right now?
I love you. Honestly, looking back, I think it's a huge part of who I am, because I remember being a kid and watching my mom lead, a strong woman lead in a way that people respected her, and I felt like people were inspired by her. I remember that clearly in my mind as a child, seeing people react to my mom. And my mom, in my mind, it's the vision of like this woman standing in front of people and people smiling back at her or laughing or like, okay, we can do it, So I think it's a huge part of my education bug and my teaching bug, but also I think my leadership bug. I just think she was someone who understood humans and how to interact with people, and that learning is an evolution, right? Like you don't get it right the first time, that you have to help people to understand it usually.
How did you get into dance?
I guess I was like a psycho kid and used to, probably like you too. I used to just dance around all the time, and there was a dance studio that opened up in my small town. This woman by the name of Kim Del Grosso, which is a funny little connection to you guys, which we didn't know at the time, had opened the dance studio and ran into my mom at the post office, because that's the town I'm from. It's like people run into each other at the post office.
I just want to jump in. So Kim Del Grosso is, for those watching, she now, for many years, has a school in Provo, Utah.
Yeah.
I would say is one of the most important schools for dance in our country, and probably in the world because of that. Jenna Johnson is a student of Center Stage, Kim Del Grosso Studio. Derek Huff, Julianne Huff, Lindsay Arnold, Whitney Carson, just to name a few, because there are so many that I'm not naming.
And Mandy Moore is like the early baby inception of Kim's teaching and studio. So Kim used to tell me just like make up dances. Like that was the thing. Go make up a solo or go make up a duet with your friend. So for me in dance, it was always just, okay, that's what I do, is I just make up moves, and that's how we do it.
Were you attracted to dance as a vehicle for you to create, or was it the athleticism of it and the challenge that it took for you to like self-discipline and conquer a physical feat?
I was initially drawn to it. Well, first of all, my mom put me in like every other, kid. I think it was kind of just like, you have a lot of energy, go to class, because I wouldn't stop dancing around. And then once I got there, I realized that this is a space where someone gives me a goal, like someone tells me how I'm supposed to do it or what it might supposed to look like or something. And I, as that competitive kind of compartmentalized kid, like I really like to go like, oh, this is what it's supposed to be, and really work hard to get to have it look like that. Like that's something that I respond to as a human. I want to know what I'm supposed to do and how I'm supposed to get there. And then I think the freedom, like I did love the freedom of making up my own stuff, but I never really felt the freedom of dance. Like I just liked the like, oh, I can make that better and better. That turn can be better, that kick can be higher, that, the snap can be faster. Like all of that, I just loved the challenge of it.
Were you good right away?
Well, Kim would tell you I was. I mean, I look back at videos and I think, I don't know.
Well,
I mean,
everybody does.
Yeah. I definitely was in the higher classes earlier than a lot of the kids my age. And again, I didn't know any difference. So, I was 9, 10 years old dancing with 18-year-olds. And I just thought, like, I remember tap dance. I have this picture of it's Run Around Sue. We're doing that song, Run Around Sue. And the tap line is basically me. And then it, like, incrementally goes up to the teacher who was, like, 35. And I think I was, like, 9. So at that time, I just, I was just a sponge for dance. I just could not get enough.
When was the moment that you knew that dance was gonna be it?
I remember a moment of being in the changing room with the older girls, and the older girls were talking about going to college.
Because that's when I decided I'm gonna dance. I was in the changing room with older
No,
girls.
shut up. Listen, the girls were all talking about, oh, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a lawyer, I want to whatever. And I remember thinking in that moment, well, I don't want to do anything except for dance, so I don't know why that would ever even cross your mind. So I guess if there was ever a moment, it's that moment.
But did you feel anything at that moment? Did anything change when you made that decision? Or it was just kind of like, well, this is what I'm doing anyway?
Yeah, I think it was that. It was because also my life has always been full of many things other than dance. I love my friends, I love my family, I love snowboarding. I was a massive athlete in high school. For me, dance was always like, okay, I'm gonna do dance, like that's my thing. But I also am not just gonna be one of those people that only does that and is just psycho about one thing, because I can't be good at it as a dancer if I'm not also good at life. Like for me, it's one and the same. If I don't know how to be a good human and like live a life that's fully realized, then I can't be the dancer I want to be.
My biggest fear is being a jack of all trades, master of none.
Master of none.
Time is of the essence, and you gotta prioritize your craft.
Right.
Did you ever feel like it was in competition with other things that you really wanted to do?
No, because I think I'm superhuman. I really believe that I live 48 hours in one day. So I know that's not true, but in my head, I'm like, well, I've got time for this. I can be really great with that, and I can be really great with that, and I can be really great at that. And why can't I be? It's my life. I get to have a huge piece of the pie and every little part that I want to live and fully realize. I also hate to lose. It's like a huge thing. As a child, my parents would sit me down and we'd play board games, and if I lost, I would throw the pieces. And so my parents knew very quickly that I would need to be very involved in many things and be very good at it, so that I could like be okay with learning how to lose in a way, or learning how to be patient with myself, because those are things that I just don't have inherently.
Fun fact, basketball.
Yeah.
You played basketball in high school?
Yes, I did. I was point guard 4 years, varsity letterman.
What?
I almost went to a Division II school on scholarship to play basketball. But anyone who knows me, I mean, you know me, I'm like 2'2", so that is not going to work for me. Like, I was never going to have a career. So as much as I love basketball, I had to step away.
Did you see Last Dance?
I did.
Recently?
I was so inspired.
The gift of 2020.
Oh,
One of the few gifts.
who would have ever known, right? That we'd be watching something in a pandemic that is so inspiring by a man, Michael Jordan. The man was elegant. I watched him play and I just felt like, this is dance. Like, I watch basketball and I think, this is what it feels like when I'm on the court versus when I'm dancing with my friends, or if I'm choreographing. It's like movement in space and using your levels up and down and around and using your muscles. Like, it's dance to me. And he was greatest of all time.
And how did you get to Los Angeles?
Okay, so summer of my sophomore year, I started dancing at a studio down in Denver. Because remember, small studio, up in the mountains, Colorado, love them, but that was not really working for me anymore. So and my parents could feel that I was getting a little restless. Started going down to Denver and traveling down to a studio where I did start competing. And
Okay.
at that time, dance competition in commercial dance was probably really different than the kind of competition that was happening in the ballroom Latin
yeah.
world.
Yeah.
I think we were kind of baby competition, and we sucked. I was so bad. Like, I mean, I remember the summer before I moved to LA, I had competed at the Nationals or whatever, that's like the big competition. And I got 12th out of 12. Like, I literally got last place. And I remember thinking in that moment, I was like, maybe I should have moved to LA and like make this my career, because I just came in last, I'm pretty sure.
What happened?
I think as a young dancer, I didn't know how to connect my emotion to my physicality. I think that's a really hard thing with dance sometimes. I mean, you wear your heart on your sleeve, so that's not hard for you. But
Sometimes too passionate.
yes, sometimes too passionate, where you get cross-eyed, where I'm like, whoa, 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 you need to calm down your face, because I don't know
That
what's
changed
happening.
my life, by the way.
Yeah, so moved to LA because I wanted to be in music videos. I wanted to be on television. I wanted to be in MGM films, even though I didn't know that was like in the 60s, so that's not going to work. Moved to LA in 1994, right when everyone stopped dancing in LA. So it was like a perfect time to
Really?
move.
Why?
It was weird. It was like the end of the music video era, and it was kind of the beginning of boy bands.
Right.
And dance wasn't being used in commercials and television as much.
Well, what
So-
genre of dance did you grow up doing?
I would say commercial dance. So I'm trained in ballet, tap, jazz, modern, hip hop, which used to be called street dance or funk. I actually started breakdancing, fun fact. That was my first class, was breakdancing as a big girl. With Kim Del Grosso's sons. I was in a troupe with them.
Wow.
That
You're going to have
happens.
to see that.
I still could probably do a backspin at some point, but I'm not going to do that today.
Once you moved out, I mean, that's a big move.
Well, you know, my mom and dad are very supportive. My family's super supportive, but my mom, coming from education, said, you cannot move to LA unless you apply for college, and you have to be accepted. So I applied for 3 colleges, and they knew that I wanted to move to LA and I was going to pursue this, and I think my parents knew that I'm weird. Like, I will succeed, even as much as people tell me no or I can't. That is the fire that fuels me. As soon as somebody tells me you can't do it or no, that's it. I'm doing it. And I'll show you, and I'll do it better than anybody else.
So what was the first thing you did when you came to Los Angeles? Like, give me an embarrassing moment and then give me like a breakthrough moment.
Okay, probably the same. So I moved to LA 3 weeks before Edge scholarship auditions. And Edge is a huge studio
Yeah.
here in LA and had a very reputable scholarship program. So it was kind of like, if you move to LA, you need to get on Edge scholarship. Moved to LA, gonna audition, I'm gonna rock it, I'm gonna get on, I'm gonna take class for free for a year, everyone at home's behind me, whoop, whoop, whoop. Do the audition, get all the way through to the end, killed that, come in the next day, because they didn't like have email at that point, because dinosaur. Walked into the studio, whoop, 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 read down, name's not on there, didn't get on scholarship. Whoa, flushed face, embarrassed, what's happening, crying, like welling up tears.
And you were certain you were going to get it.
Yes, I'd moved all my stuff out. Like, that was it. I was doing it. But, you know, honestly, it was the best thing that could have ever happened to me, because it taught me immediately. It was like a slap across the face, like, yo, if you want to do this, it's not going to be easy for you. Literally went to the bathroom and I cried, and I wiped off my eyes, and then walked out, and I thought, well, I have 2 choices. I can go home and, like, probably never want to dance again, or I can just go to class. Like, what's the point? Like, get over yourself. Go to class. And I did.
That's awesome. I think a lot of people watching can relate to that, because there's always that moment of disappointment that ultimately ends up being the turning point in anybody's life.
Yes.
I mean, for better or for different.
It, like, changes your path. Like,
Yeah.
that moment forever, like, shifts you a different direction. And as much as they're scary, I think, like, you should want those in your life, because if not, then what are you doing? You're just, like, putting down the road and just doing whatever. I mean, it's like you need people sometimes just be like,
To check you. You
Yeah.
got to get checked.
yeah.
When would you say was your first break? The moment that you were like, oh man, I can't wait to call my parents and brag about this.
I think I got hired on a Weird Al Yankovic video for like $20. And I was like, ooh, I made it big. I'm going somewhere.
What, to do what?
I was hired as a cheerleader for, like, he did those parody videos, you know, and it was
Yeah,
one
of
for
course.
Smells Like Teen Spirit.
Yes.
So I was hired to be one of the cheerleaders in that.
We're
I
gonna
don't even
have
think
to
I
find
made it in
that.
the video. I don't know. I'll have to see. But yeah, I mean, I thought I'd made it at that point. mind you, I think we got paid $20.
If you had to define Mandy Moore and your relationship with dance, what are the hats that you wear in the world of dance?
I think I'm an educator first, a creator second, and a performer third.
And it wasn't always like that.
I think it's always been like that. Even when I was a performer, like I never got off on performing. I got off on the process to performing. You know, and that's why I think I realized too, I was like, oh, maybe I'm not really supposed to be in front of the camera. I like it, I'm okay at it, I'm, you know, whatever. But for me, I just loved the creation of it, and I loved helping people to be better at it when they were doing it. Like, that was way more exciting to me than ever being the person who did it. And I think there's different people, right? Like, everyone has a different relationship with dance and performance.
I love facilitating dance and art, but there's still a desire to perform it.
Yeah.
You know, like,
you love to perform.
I love to perform.
Yeah.
And I love the spontaneity that comes with it as well. It doesn't have to be like a pre-thought out choreograph. Like, I just love the relationship that I have with an audience.
Right. Well, you're very good at it. Your exchange, like a good performer has that. They're able to read what the people need from them.
Maybe it's the ballroom dance thing, but like maybe because there's a partnership there, I feel like there's a partnership with the audience.
Cool.
Like, I'm always seeking a partner. I'm never alone. You know, so I enjoy that. But choreography, for some reason, for me was always something that was extremely intimidating.
Yeah.
And what was your process in learning how to become a better choreographer?
You know that book, The Tipping Point, the 10,000 hours? I mean, I think it's that. After I read that book, I was like, oh, that's why I know what I'm doing. It started in Kim Del Grosso's studio when I was 8, making up dances that, for me, I never felt a block. You know, creation and dance was always free to me because I didn't know the rules. I didn't know that there was like a certain way to do moves, or certain moves were cool, or you should do this if you're gonna have lots of people do it. That stuff I just learned by kind of trial by fire, I would guess, you know. And I'm a student. I watch my work and I watch other people's work and I go like, why is that good and why does mine look like poo? Like, how can I be better? I have to search, and I have to search it out, the answer.
How do you balance that ignorance is bliss when it comes to art and choreography with certain structure and mechanics? Because, you know, from what I've learned from you, and you've been probably my biggest mentor when it comes to choreography, is structure.
Yeah.
You're faced with a project and you're anxious and overwhelmed, and when you just start structuring it, it becomes a lot more doable.
I think in television, it's harder to create because you do have to almost create from math with cameras and shots and thoughts. And I still struggle with it. It's like, I call it like my thinker hat and then like my creative hat. And as a choreographer and as an educator, you have to have a plan, you know, or anyone, you dancing or whoever you're teaching to dance won't understand what's going on. Like, you have to have an idea of where you want to go. You don't want to just like throw this move out and throw that move out and see if it works with the music, because then you feel overwhelmed. And I've always found if I can give myself like a lane that I need or a box that I need to create in, then I can go, okay, I know what my box is. Now, forget about all the parameters. Now, what fun things can we put in the box? Let's dance and be free and fun and think about how we hear the music and what it makes us feel.
What was your first choreography job in Los Angeles?
I think I got hired to do a commercial with little kids. I don't remember, it was like Kids Bop or something, and it was my first big gig as a choreographer. And I just remember feeling overwhelmed. You know, I'd never been on set like that. It's really easy to have an opinion when you're an assistant or you're a dancer. But when everyone is looking at you to make the decisions as the choreographer, it's incredible the amount of pressure you can feel. And you can feel like, wow, if I make a wrong decision, this is gonna go bad, you know? Yeah. I think you incrementally just start going like, okay, well, I remember somebody told me once, like, if you don't lead the ship, nobody's going to. You're the expert in this situation, not them. And when you can look at it through that lens, you can go like, oh, it's not as overwhelming. You're right. Maybe something that seems silly, like a step touch, to somebody that doesn't dance or to a producer who doesn't know that, they're like, brilliant, she told them to step touch, you know, and it feels less pressure filled.
So you're choreographing, you transition, but as you were dancing, you were teaching.
Yes.
Talk about being a teacher.
Always a teacher, number one. I think that's the most important thing you can do as a dancer, is to exchange information about how to be a better dancer, right? Because it's hard. Dance is hard. In order to make money, like everyone, it's a real thing, I started teaching class, and I was teaching after-school programs for LA County schools. And I was teaching ballet and gymnastics. I had gymnastics mats in the back of my car. That was brutal. And I was like, we got to get a better gig here. So
This is when you moved to LA.
Yes, when I moved to LA. I was doing that for a long time. And then I realized this is not going to be my future. Could be somebody's, but it's not mine. And so I started teaching at a local dance studio in Thousand Oaks. And again...
The Lab.
No, well, it was before it was called The Lab,
okay.
which was Bobby's. And I took over the program there with a couple friends and taught there for 15 years. So while I was choreographing and traveling internationally to teach, I was also had my kids, you know, like they were my kids that I started at 6 years old and saw them all the way through, you know, many of them that were my students. So Robert Roldan, big one.
From there?
Yeah, I taught Robert from the time he was 10.
Robert is an all-star on So You Think You Could Dance,
Yes.
is an incredible dancer, friend.
Yes, very proud of that one. I was like, well, you know, sometimes as a teacher you go like, maybe I did okay. Like, that was pretty good. He turned out good, so.
But that's huge. I always say that you learn so much while teaching.
Yes.
What are some of the biggest things you've learned as a teacher?
I think I learned how to see dance in a lot of different ways. When you're a dancer, you only see it from your perspective, right? But when you become a teacher, and a good teacher, you start to understand that, oh, this student sees it this way, or this student hears music this way, or this student doesn't like it when I'm hard on them, but they do really well when we laugh. Why is this combination difficult? Well, maybe because I didn't explain it right. Or maybe they are really having a hard time with coordination, or they're having a hard time with understanding the shapes. And I think you just become a better like professor of movement when you're a teacher. You get to understand how the body is moving through space and how to communicate that to people. And then you see, I mean, you know this as a teacher, you see them start to get it, and there's nothing better than that moment. It's like that aha moment when kids go like, I got it. Or a student like finally feels the action. You're like, now you know what it feels like. It's so fun to see that. Love it.
Were there ever moments where you were kind of fed up with being a teacher, or you felt empty, or you felt like you were giving a lot of yourself?
I think teaching can sometimes feel like Groundhog Day, and it can feel overwhelming because it never ends. There's always a new class coming in. There's always a new kid coming up. There's always a new student that comes in the door. And so sometimes as a teacher, you can kind of feel like there's never an end to the tunnel. It's just a continuous tunnel of giving, giving, giving. And so it was hard as a teacher sometimes that, you know, sometimes the last thing I wanted to do at 3 o'clock on a Wednesday was do my 6-year-old jazz class. But I knew that by doing that, by putting myself in that position to see that through, because I said I was going to be there for those kids and also for myself, that I'd be stronger for it, and those kids would be stronger for it. As I started getting busier as a choreographer, and I knew that I had to make a decision, like I couldn't keep teaching 4 days a week at Bobby's, but then also be on So You Think You Can Dance. Like, it just wasn't gonna work. I can only be one place, in one place. It made it easier for me to step away because I felt like I had given those kids everything I could have possibly given. So I showed up at 3:30 when I didn't want to on a Wednesday and taught jazz. And they made me a better human, and I made them a better human. You know, I'd been there almost 15 years, I think.
Wow.
And so it was okay to step away. And, you know, seeing a kid like Robert Roldan become so beloved by the country on television as a dancer, or even somebody like a Jenna. I mean, I taught Jenna when she was little. But to see her dance and to think, man, maybe like as a teacher, I had a small little piece of that fire inside, or that thing that she's so good at.
Well, I think people forget that when you teach dance, they think a dance teacher just teaches dance.
No.
I love to preach the gospel of dance, but within that preach, you know, we're talking about life, we're talking about parallels, we're talking about raising good human beings.
Yes. There's something about having to look at yourself in the mirror, or having someone constantly tell you you're not doing it right. You learn a lot about yourself and how you can take on criticism, how you can be patient with yourself, how you can slow down your evolution and go like, ooh, get it together, and not like hate your life when you leave dance class and you're like, I didn't get the combo right. And I think that those things translate into real life, where then you meet somebody somewhere and you've got more patience for them, or you see like, oh, they're having a rough time. I know what it's like. I've had a rough time trying to do my cha-cha lock steps or whatever. Like, it really translates into real world, I think, very easily. As a teacher, we have such a responsibility to care as much as they do, you know, and it's hard to do that because we're human too. And I think a lot of teaching is just giving, giving, giving. But you have to remember as a teacher to like accept and understand and see what your students are doing.
So fun fact, I went to Pace University. My brother went to Pace University. We both pursued business management and entrepreneurship. The world knows us as dancers for life. They think we've like come out of the womb dancing. Right. But believe it or not, till we were probably like a couple of years ago, we talk about there's no plan B, but there's always, you know, like you talked about, yes, you're pursuing dance, but you're pursuing life. You're pursuing yourself and trying to fulfill yourself 360. So anyway, we went to Pace University to get our higher education. And I had no idea that there was a dance program. And I wish I knew that there was a dance program, because one of the regrets is I grew up disciplining in ballroom dancing. Yeah. Not until Dancing with the Stars was I introduced to all these other styles. And to be honest, that's one of the reasons why I love you so much and I am so grateful for you, is because meeting you on Dancing with the Stars, in particular your role in Dancing with the Stars as supervising choreographer, producer, I also picked your brain as a teacher. Yeah. Because I am a student and I needed a teacher, and because you were passionate about teaching and everything we just spoke about, I was the beneficiary of that passion of yours. Why I mentioned Pace University is because one of your teaching gigs was at Pace University downtown.
I'm a professor at Pace University. Who would have ever thought? Right? And I didn't know that you had gone to Pace, and then I think I just mentioned or something, or I'd seen on your wall, or it was like, Pace, I'm a professor there. Yeah, I mean, I think it's amazing that it's a pretty new program, and I just love that these kids have access to this information about dance that you just can't get anywhere. You know, commercial dance is an odd little duck because it's ever evolving, ever changing. So if you don't have people that are teaching those classes that are like in the now and the know of what that is, you're not going to get the information. So yeah, it's crazy.
How has dance grown in your lifetime?
It's exploded. It was huge in the 40s, 50s, 60s, MGM. Then it went away. Then the 80s, it was all those 80s dance films that a lot of us grew up on and were like, great. Moved to LA.
Fever.
Yes, Dirty Dancing, Staying Alive, all the Footloose, like all those Flashdance, great films, and great dance films. Then it kind of went away for a bit because I think everyone was like, okay, no more dance. We're done with dance.
Let's blow stuff up.
Exactly.
Action
film.
Exactly.
Seriously, you're exactly right. Somehow, right around the time of like reality television, it was like this weird little world started to erupt again with dance, with So You Think You Can Dance and Dance with the Stars. I think those two shows single-handedly burst open the world of dance to people. And I'm so thankful to those shows. I mean, I don't know how in like the world I got to work on both of those shows for so long, but it is a huge part of who I am, and I know it's a huge part of who you are too as a creator. And as a dancer in this world right now, imagine.
You're being humble about being a part of those shows. You're a pillar on So You Think You Can Dance. You're a pillar on Dancing with the Stars, not just in your influence on the talent there. And, you know, I mean, the show existed before you. Yeah. But in terms of offering the talent on the show, I think people at home don't understand that we as dancers and choreographers constantly seeking advice, and the generation of Max on that show never had that advice. Yeah. You know, unless they had connections outside of the show and they could seek it. But someone like my brother, who didn't have any connections in Los Angeles, came from a dancing, you know, ballroom dance background, was figuring things out on his own. Right. And when I came here, besides having him as a guide, you know, we had the access to someone like you.
But I also started kind of when you did. I felt dance is dance, except for when it's ballroom dance and commercial dance. Like, they are very similar and run complementary to one another, but they don't always fuse. And as someone who started with you guys, that's one of the biggest things I learned when I first got there. I thought, you know, I'd be like, well, it's just about change like this. And I realized when I talked to you and I worked with you guys more, that it's not just the ball change, that there's a nuance, and I really credit you. You were so patient with me and would be like, well, Mandy, it's like this, and I'd be like, but can't you just go that way? I mean, we laugh about it, but it's like, you guys are always like, cannot compute, we only do it this way, and you know.
Right.
But I found such a love and respect for that art form that I never would have experienced if I hadn't been on Dance with the Stars. If like I could leave a stamp anywhere, is to know that like in our worlds we can be different, but like I can know and respect something about your world and your art and not stomp on it, and you can do the same with me, and we can just be better by understanding each other a little bit more, which is a huge parallel to what's even happening in our world right now.
Well, that's the thing. It's being masters of ballroom dance solely, and yes, inherently being a performer, but ultimately having just the skill set of ballroom dance. It was so fresh and so incredible to have ballroom dance directed, and again, it's back to you, because you were able to take. The funniest thing with you is the nicknames that you give these moves. So let's recite some of the names that you know.
I mean, I love Slingshot Sally.
Slingshot Sally has a completely different name.
Yes.
A technical name I don't know.
It's okay, but I love that move. I also love the apples,
The apples?
like lapels or papels.
Lapels.
Lapels. Uphell.
In the
Or I call them
paso
like
doble.
the lapels or the apples. So those are really
apples.
good. I love those.
Right.
In the jive, you guys do these kicks that I'm always like, oh, I love those kicks.
The stop and go?
Oh, yep. No, I'm sure I called it something
Yeah.
else, but yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, I used to really like to make you guys giggle with that stuff because you guys are so good. And so sometimes I'd be like, yeah, can we just add like a couple slingshot Sallies? Like, no biggie, let's do it.
Well, that's the thing. You taught me how to look at ballroom dance as movement. I always wanted to tell stories, but I never had the skill set to tell stories. And I'm like, how do I, so you also taught me that you don't have to stick to this thing of technique and structure that you were raised on.
Right.
That you can break the rules to innovate.
Always keep the tradition. Always keep the art and the
Thoughtfulness,
foundation.
at least.
Yes.
You should always refer
Yes.
to and be thoughtful to the foundation.
But why not evolve? Like then it makes it more accessible to everyone, because then it's you, Val, the artist, dancing in a way that is telling a story about something you want to tell a story about through the vocabulary and the movement you know. It's not just about doing the arm perfect or the transition perfect, because you will and already do. You've been trained to do that. So now switch it up and shift, see if you could try something. Like I remember being fascinated when I realized that you guys just do phrases and movement anywhere in the music. Like you could just do it anywhere and you'd find your one or whatever. And that was like, pfft. I was like, what do you mean? You don't hear that accent? Can't you stop? And you're like, no, that's not our choreography. We just keep going through. And I was like, oh, no. You're going to have to stop on that accent. So
Right, and it's hearing music differently.
Yes. Yeah.
Not in structural phrasing, but lyrically.
Yes.
One of the things that stand out to me, one of the Mandy moment for me, we were doing a number and I had to find camera, and you were like, all right, you got this choreography, but on 3, I'm gonna need you to turn around and look. And
That was really good the way you just did
yo,
that. You weren't weird.
You saw it? I wasn't weird. That took a long time to master, because the first time I looked, you were like, yo, find camera. I said, all right, 5, 6, 7. And I'm just thinking of steps and I'm counting in my eyes. And yeah, you were so sweet. You were literally like, hey, relax your gaze.
Yes.
Or don't stare at me, you scared me.
I think I said that. I usually give you hey, maybe, but maybe don't do that. Yeah. Well, I remember when I first started with Dancing with the Stars, I thought it was very odd that the director would tell me notes to tell you guys to look at camera. And so for a second, it took me also a while to go okay, why? Why are they doing that? Because usually when you dance, it's uncomfortable to be dancing this way, and then all of a sudden I have to look over your shoulder. And
But also, just chime in, for ballroom dancers,
yes,
we're supposed to be looking at each other.
Right, which I just never understood why the director was always saying this. And I knew that it was a language of the show. And so I used to study the numbers, and I'd put them in slow motion, and I'd go back and forth, and I'd go why do they want? And then I realized that they ask you to do that so it makes the audience at home feel like you're looking straight into their eyes. And so I was like, okay, once I could wrap my head around that, then I thought, but it's not fair. You're not explaining to these people what they look like, and you're just giving them this note off the cuff while they're flying around in dance to just like all of a sudden look over here and not look like a complete nerd ball. Like I was like, this is not fair. So I made it my mission to help you guys, because and Max knows this. Like I used to give him notes about where he was supposed to look, and he'd be like, boo boo, I'm traveling this way. I'm like, I know, Max, but could you just like open your shoulder? And he'd be like, and he'd do it. And I remember taking a screenshot of you, and I think I had my computer open right before we went live, and I said, look, this is what you look like when you look into the camera. Would you want to look at yourself like that?
No.
And you were like, no. And then we had this conversation, and you were like, I don't know how to make it natural. And I think we just talked about, like, can you in that moment just be you, like this, when we're just talking, like you're not thinking about anything, you're chatting, you're like seeing who I am, I see who you are, we're laughing, we're doing whatever. If you in that moment can start to think that that person in that lens is that another person that you want to talk to, it helps you relax, and it helps you like get in the frame of mind that, you know, then you're going to have a facial that people are going to want to look at.
You choreograph for So You Think You Can Dance?
Yes, I
You've done more for So You Think You Can Dance, but let's just say you've done a lot of art on that show. Talk about the pressure that you feel and the responsibility, not just to teach them in that week, but when you come in as a choreographer, but like the piece has to be good.
It is so stressful, and you know, because you're now a choreographer on that show. It's like as soon as you do one good number, you're almost like, damn, I don't want to do another one, because then you're like, can I just go out with that good one? Because you're really only as good as whatever your last thing was, right? And that show in particular is so like ripe with chaos. You don't have the kids that long. You don't know who they are. They don't know the style. Plus you're asked to create something that's memorable for television, that the judges don't hate, and that America and everyone watching doesn't think is the worst thing you've ever done. So it's a lot of pressure.
And people don't realize that you also have to respect the integrity of the competition.
Yes.
Because as a teacher, you want to be like, sneak away, like, hey, come here.
Yeah.
Also, don't forget this, and that. And there are producers that are going to stand in the way of that.
Yes. There's also a thing about creating with your voice, right? Which I don't know if you ever feel pressure this way, but I also feel like, well, when people say to me, do a Mandy Moore number, I'm like, what is that? I don't even know. What's a Mandy Moore number? Then I have to go like, yo, check yourself. Like, what do you feel in this moment? And that's where you have to take off the math hat, the TV hat, and go like creator hat, and go, okay, what do I feel from this song? How does this music make me want to move? But then all the while, it's like somebody's asking you to add a toe touch in there and like a back flip so everyone will cheer, and like, what are they going to play in slow motion? And
I was having a conversation with the composer, actually, he does scores for film. We talked about artistry and the difference between being an artist and being a craftsman, and how, you know, lasting in the business, you know, being able to take direction, not to take things personally. There's a lot of times you need to separate the two. As an artist, you can be vulnerable, you can take things personal, you know, most of the time you should, because that's how you create the art. A lot of times in this business, you need to be just a craftsman, a great craftsman.
I will say 100% that is the only reason I work in this business, because I'm a craftsman. I am okay with the producer telling me that whatever I created was bad and I need to redo it. I can't get connected so much to it. Whereas like if I'm working with you guys on your tour, or I'm working on something that's a passion project, or I'm working with dancers that are at a dance studio, I get to be a little more free, or I get to understand, have that dialogue together and feel like, hey, is this what you want, blah, blah, blah. But sometimes it's just about like giving them the product they want.
You got to serve the bigger picture.
Yes. That pays bills, man. And it also is a skill set that I've learned, that I'd rather be the person that people bring up my name and go like, oh, I love Mandy. I want to work with Mandy. Yeah, I love Mandy. Instead of like, ooh, she's tough. She didn't really like do a good job on that last job. Because I think I still get to be an artist in like little rays of light within my work. And it pays my bills, and it pays me tenfold in the way I feel when I get to create something and be with people that I love.
You don't just arrive on the red carpet of La La Land premiere, you know, you do a lot of stuff that doesn't always feel good. Like, what's the oddest choreography you had to do?
I mean, I'll tell you the oddest dance job I did. I mean, tons of choreography has been odd, and tons of choreography has been bad. Let's also talk about that. My early years of So You Think, I had some jamming numbers that I like hit home runs out of the park early, because I didn't think about it. And then I had about 3 years of really bad numbers where I never made it to first base. Like, I was bad. Those moments, again, shaped me because I'm in front of millions of people.
With expectation.
Yes. And having opinions about what you're doing, right? Like, people are like, ooh, that's a really bad jazz number. And you're like, okay, what am I going to do next week? Another really bad jazz number, right? Or a terrible contemporary number, like, oh, that's why they went home. But then you start to really go like, oh, so I know what that feels like, and I know what it feels like to hit a home run. So now I just got to figure out how to like get myself into the position where I'm doing what I want to do while servicing the project. Probably the awkwardest thing I ever did was dancing naked in a barrel.
Dancing naked in a barrel?
That happened. Well, it was, you know, a tube top, so I wasn't totally naked. But it was for a show that was on television, and we had to like pretend like our clothes got ripped off, and then we like were standing there like our clothes were off in a barrel. And then I don't know, we skipped down the street or something. I was like, I trained my whole life to this.
Yeah, so I was going to say, how do you navigate through your artistic integrity?
There was no artistic integrity there, Val.
Sometimes you just got to like, fuck
yeah.
it.
And honestly, in those moments, it was probably in that moment that I realized that I'm not just like a booked dancer. I'm more than that, because that wasn't enough for me. I thought like, okay, they're calling action, and I think this is the most ridiculous job I've ever done in my life. And it's okay, but I've been here for 10 hours. I'm tired, and I don't want to be here. Like, I don't want to shoot all night naked in a barrel. I'd much rather be, like, dancing with my 6-year-olds or, you know, making up moves that are with people that I know and love. You know, I don't want to be that person that's just, like, dancing in a barrel.
You choreographed an Amazon commercial.
I did.
How was that?
It was one of the hardest things I've ever done. It was so hard. I found on commercials, no one knows what's going on ever. It's like they just put you in a cannon and they just like shoot you off, and they're like, make something. And then you're like, but what's the music? How long? Who's in it? Like, you know, it was one of the most stressful jobs, and it ended up being really great. But I found in that moment that choreographers are directors.
You start to edit your own track. You know,
Yes.
You start to direct your own dance.
Yes.
You start to tell your own story, and then you got to pitch it to the
Yes.
right departments to approve it.
Yes. Nothing has happened until you say it happens. That's what I found on commercials. It's like everyone just says, well, they dance. And you're like, but what does that mean? What do you mean? Did they bop-ma? Do they cha-cha? Do they like, what are they doing? So you as the choreographer have to go like, bleh, and tell people what you think it's supposed to be. And then, you know, people chime in and say, well, it's not that, or it's not that.
We
or,
want a
"Oh, it's
backflip."
that." Exactly, we want a backflip. Or can he knee slide? No, he can't knee slide. There's no knee pads. And he's going to break his back. No, he can't knee slide. There's no rehearsal. You know, and all these like hysterical things you have to deal with as a choreographer and a creator. It's like bananas.
Okay, so then you become a creator. I think that's really your evolution. I mean, I'm going to speak on your behalf.
Thank you.
And then it leads you to a project like La La Land.
Right. A project for your life. I mean, like, let's be honest.
So before that, I'm sure one of your proudest moments was choreographing for Bradley Cooper.
In Silver Linings, yep.
Yes, and Jennifer Lawrence. How
Yep.
was that?
Bananas, because David O. Russell is a dear friend, but a crazy madman. Got hired on that job because he fired the choreographer before that. He'd been working with his choreographer for months, fired this person, and I was on the road with So You Think tour. He called me, and he was crazy on the phone because he's all over the place. Like I feel like if I were to draw David O. Russell's brain, it's like a tsunami of information, right? So he's just on the phone call, and luckily I didn't know who he was. I didn't know that he had done The Fighter, which is one of my favorite films. And he's on the phone, he's like, hey, I need to do this duet, and there should be a fan kick, and it's Jennifer Lawrence and Bradley Cooper, and they're not really supposed to be good, but they're supposed to be good. And I'm like, okay, I can do it, I don't know. So I flew to Philly and went into the meeting with him, and he basically did that again, like ×2, and then told me another couple moves he wanted in it. I was like,
And you're
okay.
like, you know, for a dancer to listen to someone of authority and
Yes.
creative authority say nonsense,
Yes.
you're kind of like, okay, but I got it.
Yes. And I go away for a day, and I go to make up whatever I think he's asked me to do, and he comes back in, and he basically, like, yelled at me. He was like, what? This is that. Like, he was really mean and really, like, kicked a chair. He was not happy. And in that moment, I realized, okay, I have two options. I can either be like, I'm out of here, like, pfft, or I can walk back in there and be like, okay, you don't get to talk to me like that. If we're going to work together, we need to be, like, cool, because I'm not against you in this moment. I'm with you. And so somehow I walked back into the office and I said those things. And then he was like, "You're the best ever." And then I was like, "Ah!" for like 3 months. And then it was one of the craziest jobs of creation. And you talk about like letting yourself like just be open to the project. And I probably did 70 versions of that duet. No kidding. Every single day. And little tweaks, like maybe go to the right instead of the left. I mean, by the end of it, I thought I was crazy. I came home for Thanksgiving that year, and my mom and dad were actually worried about me. I slept for 2 days.
Really?
I was just like, I'm out.
But it was, what's important is that in that film, it's such a climatic moment. The whole
Huge.
build-up is to that dance.
Yes! And if I had known that, and if I had known I was going to be dancing in front of Robert De Niro as Robert De Niro's eye line, I mean, let's be honest, I would have run for the hills if I had known any of this. But you start saying yes to projects, and you just say like, yes, I can do it, and then figure it out later. And then before you know it, you're in the middle of it, and you're creating, and you're part of the team, and you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, and they're relying on you. And so you're like, okay, I guess I'm in this now.
That's the part that people don't see at home. They see a movie or they see a piece of work and they're like, wow, that's so beautiful. How did they ever do it? Well,
Right.
with 100 rough drafts.
Right.
So how do you keep your stamina through the rough drafts?
I have to say on Silver Linings, that's when I learned that, and I learned it from David O. Russell, because I realized the first one I did was honestly the one we ended up using. But it took
Nice.
70 more to get back there. And I think in some subconscious way, he was trying to teach me that it's an ever-evolving process. And whatever you came up with today is great. But maybe it could be this tomorrow. Or maybe it could be this the next day. And like keeping that dreamer mentality and not becoming too attached to what it was the first time. Because I think as creators, we work really hard. Like, well, it needs to be this, and it's going to be this, this, and this. Great, done, check. But maybe it's not. And the beauty is that if you can learn as the creator to like always be the dreamer within it and go, yeah, maybe it's not. What if we try this? And there's this like surrender that has to happen and a trust that has to happen inside, because you have to trust that you'll get back to a place where you feel this is it. This is my work. This is what I should be doing. Because if not, you do feel like you're flailing sometimes. Like there were definitely times where I was like, okay, we're 2 weeks in. I've done so many versions of this. I don't even know what version I'm doing anymore. But then when I was able to step back from it and go, oh, this was all about me learning what this whole thing needed to be. And whatever I thought on the surface was the thing was just like literally putting my toe in. I hadn't really dove in yet. And then when I dive in, I start to get to know my work better, and I get to go, oh, maybe a little bit of that and a bit of that and a bit of that. Because it is easy to just go like, well, it's this, this, this. But then you're missing all the like stuff that could be underneath that, and that the stuff that could be in there, and the scary part of creating when you're like, I don't know what I'm doing. Because that is what every creator feels in the moment. You know this.
Yeah.
Every time you go to do a number, you're like, do it. Is it this? Is it that? Is it this? How do I teach it? Da-da-da. Is it this music? Is this costume? What? Every creator feels that. And if you're not feeling that as a creator, you're not there yet. So just know that as a creator, everyone feels that.
Stress is good.
Oh my gosh, you know this. It's World War VII.
Right.
Every time I get a job, I'm like, sweet. Ah, why did I say yes to this job? Now
Right.
I'm stressed.
Right.
Yeah.
Speaking of a stressful job, and at that point, I remember we were already close. We were already friends. And you were like, yo, I'm going to this big meeting. It might be a feature film. It's like a big thing, and dance is really prominent in this, because Silver Lining Playbooks wasn't a dance film.
No.
So this is a film. They're talking to several people, I think, right?
Yeah.
So talk about that, and ultimately how you landed with La La Land, and then the rest is history.
Yeah, it's really, the rest is history. It's crazy. That actually, funny enough, I had been asked to go in. It was like through my agent, so it was very just kind of like normal. And come to find out later, I didn't know it at the time, but they had met with something like over 40 choreographers at that point. And they had sent me the script and like 3 of the songs, and they wanted me to come in with just some ideas or whatever. So I read the script, and of course I was just like, oh my gosh, this would like be so amazing if I could do this, because I really felt like I understood the tone of the script, and I saw, when I was listening to the music, I thought, oh, this is the music's so alive, like it it spoke to me as far as like my vibe of movement, and I'm like, I like a little nostalgia. I kind of like the MGM era. That's like my vibe inside. So I went in and had the meeting, and it was Damien and two of the producers, and
Damien
Chazelle, the director, yes. And I ended up being in there for 2 hours and just shooting it up with those guys. I mean, I was talking it up with the cats. And we just kept vibing. Like, it was really weird. I was just like, oh, yeah, what about that? And then, have you seen that thing? And he'd be like, have you ever seen that? I was like, oh, yeah, what do you like about that? And just ended up being in there a long time. And I called my agent after I got out, and he was like, you just got out of that meeting? I was like, yeah. And he's like, most of my other clients were in there for 10 minutes. You've been in there for 2 hours. And 2 hours later, they called and said, hey, can we get Same day, yeah. They said, can we get some recommendations? So, and then in that moment, I'm like, I got to call the big dogs. So I called David O. Russell to recommend me for La La Land, and he was so kind, and I guess, you know, gave me a glowing recommendation, which I'm forever grateful for. And
80 takes, enthusiastic takes.
He knew that I didn't ever leave. You know, like, I was in it with him the whole time. I was like, you want a fan cake? I'll give you 7, man. What do you want? You want a fan cake? Because I'm here to serve you. This is your story, and I'm a part of the team. I'm here.
Basketball.
Yes, you're exactly right.
Camaraderie.
Yes, teamwork.
Teamwork.
It's not a lonely island, because it can feel like you are a lonely island when you're creating, but when you're in production and on a film, it's a team.
All right, another day of sun.
Ah!
Let's get into it.
Are we watching? Oh
yes,
my gosh.
So we're watching. All right, so another day of sun.
All right.
Let's watch it. Let's see it.
Oh.
And then we'll break it down. There you go.
So it was 107 out. I thought the dancers were gonna die. Just BS.
The dancers are always on the brink of death.
Okay, right there, red chair or red car. That's my teacher, Cinder Che.
Show me.
I used to train with her all the time when I first moved to LA. So it was like a little like, thanks for teaching me. My dear assistant, Jillian, in the white car.
Yep.
Yeah, assisted me on the film. Also, Patrick taught him since he was 10. Mecca, love her. Demo. Okay. Okay, this was the only role that actually had to be auditioned. I had to fight for this girl to get it.
Talk to me.
Everyone was just like, this has to be an actress, it has to be a singer. And I said, guys, we are screwed if it's not a dancer. It needs to be someone who can sing, dance, and act. So I actually auditioned, I think, almost 30 girls for this part. And she was actually the girl that I brought in for Skeleton Crew the first day.
You made it on the billboard and you took your crew with you.
Yes!
There are millions of dancers.
Yes.
But you stick with the people there that are there with you, right?
Yes. I knew that this scene was going to be the hardest thing that I had ever created in my life. And in order to get it done, I needed to have, like, the OG crew. The crew that I could look at 107-degree weather on the second day and be like, you got this, right? And they'd be like, yep, I got this, right? Like, it's your tribe, it's your squad, it's your people you take into battle, you know? And yeah, these guys I've known Rashma since she moved here in 95.
Wow.
Yeah, it's beautiful. She was so good, so simple.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I love this genre of music.
Yes, jazz, the best. Simple, okay. Okay, so one of the hardest things as a choreographer is not to put 422 moves in the first 5 seconds.
Right.
Because you hear that music and you go like, I want to dance, like I just want to go, right? And I really credit Damien with
calming you down.
Yes, and like telling me and assuring me that it was gonna get there, like that we were gonna go there, that it didn't have to be 100 moves right away, and that, you know, he was like, I just want her to look like she's waking up. And I was just like, oh, that's really good direction, Damien. Okay, because I want to fly, you know. So it was good though, because if I'd come out, you know, guns a-blazing, then I would have nowhere to go by the end of the number. And that's one of the things I'm most proud of is the kind of the tempo build and like the cadence build of the number. Because by the end, when they all get up on the
huge payoff.
Yes, you're like, I'm gonna cry. Yeah. Okay. So love her. Stressful also. First girl. Good job, Rashma. Hunter, Demo. Love Dom. Okay, you would never think walking and singing is one of the hardest things you've ever done. I have the utmost respect for that at this point in my life, because also, you know, it's like creating, exactly, it's like you're introducing these characters that, you know, Damien always said, people are either going to love our film or hate our film in the first 30 seconds. And it's true. Like, if you're not into people walking and singing, you should probably leave the theater right now. You know, but figuring that out and, like, how many cars they're going to go down and then how fast the camera's going to move. Are they head to toe? Are they waist up? I mean, it's a whole math problem. You're almost just like, just walk and sing at this point. Ah, Dana Wilson. Okay, fun fact. That little blue car actually moved forward in the shot because we had put all the cars up there 4 feet off. So when we loaded them up onto the ramp at midnight on Friday night, they were all off, and that car had to be exactly there by that part, so that when the camera was facing the other direction, Mike, who's driving that car, had to take off the brake and put the brake on. Stress ball change. Get into that.
And this is not a set, right? This is
actual. This is the freeway, Val. Oh my gosh, it's the 105, 110 interchange.
Which kind of it's depicting real life, because this is kind of what it looks like every day with traffic.
It does. It's every day of our life. Another day in the sun.
It's just people are not dancing like that.
It's very true. Well, inside you are, in your heart you are.
Yeah.
You know. Okay. Oh. Beautiful shot. Okay, so that little girl that just flipped was a UCLA gymnast, and she was only hired to do a flip. That was her whole job. Because from the day one, Damien was like, I want somebody to flip off a car. Do you know how hard it is to flip off a car when you're on an angle, 47 takes in? I was so proud of that little girl, because she's also not a dancer.
Right.
You worked with Lori Hernandez, right?
Yep.
And you know that as a gymnast, it's hard sometimes to like let go and release, because they're so used to having their muscles so tight. So, you know, just to even get her to dance a little bit on the car, I was like, all right, girl, get your dance on, you know?
Yeah.
And then go flip and land on a dime. And if you notice, this is all one continuous shot right here. Very difficult to time. How close the camera gets there. Okay, so those people on frame right, they're not actually there. We put them in post. Because actually on frame right, that's like 100-foot drop to the freeway below. Oh. And so we couldn't actually have people there. So it was really fun. We got to do a post shoot and put them in.
That's crazy.
Isn't that neat?
Yeah.
Jillian.
Yes. She is so strong.
The best.
Love the colors.
Yeah.
And Riccio, come on.
Okay, so that door broke. I don't know if you've ever read anything about that, but that door broke like 2 takes in, and it was originally rigged to come out really quick. And poor Mike, like one time he threw it up, and the springs broke, and we couldn't open it for like an hour, and so we were all stressed. And then they fixed it, and there was like 4 guys that had to pull. So Mike had to, when he was facing the door, had to be like, go! And the guys would pull it, and he'd be like, argh! And the door would go up.
And then
so it's like, yes, all these little things on set that happen, right?
And the guys that are in the truck had to sit in that truck.
Yes. Every time the door opened, I thought, oh my gosh, these guys are gonna like pass out. Like, are they even gonna be playing anything by the time the door opens? Yeah, they were sitting in there the whole time. Now watching this back, I love how they all look like real people moving. Like, that was a big thing. It's like, it wasn't supposed to be like, cha-cha-cha, here's my dance, boom, boom, boom. They're supposed to be these people, these dreamers that sit in traffic every day. Like, I always imagine Mike as this, like, guy that works at an accounting firm, but he's actually, like, a drummer. He wants to be a drummer in a band. And so, like, any of this creation that we did when I was choreographing, it was all based off this idea that inside of us, we're all dreamers. Like, we dream about something that we're not doing in our life right now. And it could be something as simple as, playing an instrument or dancing or like slow dancing in the living room or reading a poem or writing something. But I think we all have something inside of us that maybe we don't do because we have other things that we're preoccupied with. So I just love this idea for this number. Oh my God, thank God they didn't pass out. Nick Drago.
This dude.
Liz Imperio, beautiful choreographer, dancer, teacher.
Oh yeah, I know Liz.
Yeah. So this was our final shot of the opening, and before we get into it, I just want everyone to remember that the person that was operating the camera was holding a 70-pound Steadicam and following the action, and then at the end you'll see that he actually gets on this crane and starts raising over everyone. So this man was a superhuman, Ari, and was our Steadicam operator.
Wow.
He was incredible.
Literally behind the scenes,
Yes.
making the dance.
And I was under a car on this particular one, right behind camera, and the most stressful part of the entire job was having to count in, because it goes like, there's a downbeat that happens where the skateboarder drops. And think about everything you know about physics, Val. It's kind of hard to count in a skateboard drop, right? So one of the most stressful parts was having to be like, all right, 3, 2, 1, skate, Ari, go! It was like this very crazy math problem that happened. And I mean, when they nailed this, it was like you could feel it. I had this like handheld monitor, and like I got goosebumps, and I was like, I think we just nailed the shot. Like, it was one of those that you all feel. But imagine just trying to count this in, Val. Director's sister. This guy. Parkour. Beautiful!
Hey.
Balin. The wind. Okay. So that wind, we did the Golden Globes for Jimmy Fallon. We did like a parody of this, and he was sure that we had a wind machine that actually made that happen. We didn't. That was the Lord above that made that happen right there. It had never happened before.
No,
and on that take,
wow.
her skirt blew up at that perfect moment, and yeah. So it's kind of one of those moments that it's like it all worked. Everything happened. Look at him. What? That happened! We made it!
Wow.
Yeah.
The magnitude of that.
Yeah.
In hindsight, what does that feel like?
It feels, it's overwhelming to watch sometimes, because I know like how much work went into that, just not only for myself but those dancers, and just like I get really emotional watching it, thinking that it was 107 degrees out. We'd done 40 some takes, and every single time those cats got up onto the cars, they danced their faces off. It was so windy, you could barely hear the music. They jumped off, they sang at camera and got in. Like, I'm like, there's nothing like dancers. They're superhuman. Like, they're just beautiful. Like, you have to be a good human to want to do that over and over and over again and believe in the project. And like, I know I get emotional thinking about it, because it's like, they worked so hard that day,
And the reason why they work so hard is you.
Yeah. I mean, I
think that's why it's so emotional as well, because back to basketball, camaraderie.
Yes.
I think people think dance and they think performance, and there's a lot of vanity in it as well,
Yes.
besides the artistry.
Yes.
But there's also the human element, I think, is the common denominator in every profession.
Yeah. Because I think they went home that day feeling like they were a part of something bigger than themselves. I did. I went home thinking like, I think we just made something that's going to make people really happy. Like, and it did. Thankfully, this went on to be something that so many people watched and were so affected by, and hopefully inspired them to do whatever they do in their lives. And like, that's the ultimate as a creator, right? And as someone who is a teacher. Like, I look at all of them and go like, you did that, you guys, we did that. It was only written in the script that they get out and dance, and we made that together.
Yeah.
You know?
From nothing, too. I think that's such a huge thing.
Yeah. What? Val, what? That happened. I mean, the only thing that would have been better is if you guys could have been in it.
I know.
It's okay. You had to work. You had to work that day.
We're gonna write our own film.
Okay, I'm into it. Let's do it.
Choreograph.
Maybe no cars this time, though. We'll do something different. Trucks.
We'll figure it out. Tanks.
Tanks. Totally.
So I'm very humbled by our friendship and the fact that I get to call you my friend, and you've obviously, such an incredible artist. You've also inspired me to own my artist as well. Like, even relating to this, everyone has that little dreamer inside of them. Yeah. Even a career dancer needs the license to consider himself an artist beyond just dance. If you had to leave the artist, the insecure artist out there, that's, no matter what age, honestly, like I said, that inspiration could come when in your 40s too. It doesn't have to. What would be the advice on how do you find that license to create and actually pursue that?
I think you have to remember why you're creating. Are you creating for everyone else to like it? Or are you creating because it's an expression of what you feel? And if you can try to walk that line of, even if somebody gives me a job and says, hey, we want you to create this, I'm still creating it out of an expression for what I feel from the moment. And if I can I find the best work and the most gratifying experiences are the ones that I can center myself and say, what do I feel from this moment? How am I expressing myself? And that is good enough, and that is valid. And some people may like it, and some people may hate it, and you just have to be like, you know what? This is what I felt from the moment, and I did my very best that I possibly could. And if you can remember that when you're creating, and get rid of that weird thing on your shoulder that's like, you can't do it, you suck. If you can be like, shh, for 1 second, just be quiet, let me create, I think you'll find you can get through that moment, and then this little guy on that shoulder will just be quiet and sit down for a second.
All right, last question, and then we're out.
Love it.
What's your favorite TikTok dance?
Oh my gosh. Can I talk about this? I've never been on TikTok. I never even opened it. Isn't that terrible?
No,
it's terrible.
It's a great thing.